Meterpreter is an advanced, dynamically extensible payload that uses in-memory DLL injection stagers. Are you wondering what is stagers? You will understand it in a few seconds. Meterpreter communicates over the stager socket and provides a comprehensive client-side Ruby API. It features command history, tab completion, channels, and more. We will see all of them during the demo. Well, not all of them, most of them. Now hold on a moment. What does stagers means? This is why I left this part after our exploitation practice to talk about the payload types. A payload in Metasploit refers to an exploit module. In fact, there are three different types of payload modules in the Metasploit framework: singles, stagers, and stages. These different types allow for a great deal of versatility and can be useful across numerous types of scenarios. Whether or not a payload is stage is represented by the forward slash in the payload name. For example, Windows/shell bind TCP is a single payload with no stage, whereas Windows/shell/bind TCP consists of a stager, which is the bind TCP, and a stage, which is the shell. The Meterpreter design goals is to be stealthy because it resides entirely in memory and writes nothing to disk. No new processes are created as Meterpreter injects itself. Also, by default, Meterpreter uses encrypted communication. To be honest, this payload is very powerful. You will understand what I mean when we see the demo together. Finally, this payload is extensible. Its features can be augmented at runtime and are loaded over the network. New features can be added to Meterpreter without having to rebuild it. Let's jump in and start using Meterpreter. Let's see a full example from scratch. An exploitation of a Windows XP host using the Meterpreter payload. Before exploiting the XP machine with Metasploit, it is a good idea to scan for open ports using Nmap to confirm that ports are accessible and accepting connections. I'm using the -sv argument to list all the services installed on the Windows XP machine, followed by its IP address at 192.168.0.107. Check the port number 445. It is running the Microsoft DS Samba service. This specific service is used to share printers and file across the network. The Samba service is vulnerable to the vulnerability in Windows Samba called MS0867, which we will see it in a moment. Now let's start Metasploit and attack this machine. I assume that you already watched the previous demos in this module to understand the basics of exploitation. First, start the PostgreSQL service. Now we can start the MSF console. I will search for the Samba service exploit. Perfect. Now let's copy the name. I will execute the use command to select this exploit. If you want to read information about the exploit itself, then type info and hit enter. We can see that the Windows XP target is vulnerable for sure. Now let's move on and see some options. The important option to set is the remote host value, rhost. This is the IP address of the victim machine that is running the vulnerable Windows XP. The IP address of the Windows XP is 192.168.0.107. Next comes the payload. We are going to use the Windows Meterpreter payload, right? If you want to see all the available payloads, then use the show payloads command. Let's search for the Meterpreter payload in the list. This is our candidate. Copy it and let's use it. Now that we have selected the payload, it's time to check the options once again. The options also include additional payload options. We need to set the local host value, which is the IP address of my local machine. It happens that my local IP address is 192.168.0.109. Let's make sure that this is really my IP address. No mistakes are allowed here. Very good. The IP address is correct, so now we can move on. Now, Metasploit is all configured and ready to launch the exploit. Alright, just enter the word exploit and hit enter. Hello, Meterpreter. Mission successful. I should get some champagnes and start partying at this moment. No, I'm kidding. So let's type in help and hit enter to see what comments are available. I know there's a lot here. That's why I mentioned that this payload is very powerful. Now let's have a quick look at the comments categories. First, we have the core comments. Then we have the file system comments. After that, we have the networking comments, system comments, user interface comments, webcam comments, elevate comments, password database comments, and finally the timestamp comments. Let's try running some of the popular comments. The sysinfo command will get the system information of the victim machine. According to the output, it shows some basic information about the Windows installation. The next step to invoke is to migrate our process. At the Meterpreter prompt, enter the command ps to obtain a list of the running processes. The ps command also returns the full path name of each process. The list identifies that explorer.exe is running. In this particular case, it is identified with the process ID 1568. As this is a generally stable application, we will migrate the shell to that process. Migration completed successfully. Perfect. One of the first parameters to identify is the virtual machine. With the Meterpreter session open between the compromised system and the attacker, the command run check VM will answer our question. The return data indicates that this is a VirtualBox virtual machine. Honest and accurate answer. I like it. One of the most effective Meterpreter scripts is the Windows enumerator, WinEnum. It uses both command line and wmake calls to fully characterize the target system. In addition to the enumeration, the WinEnum script also dumps the registry and collects the system hashes for decryption. Our final example. If you want the command prompt style shell on the victim's machine, enter the shell command and hit enter. Now it's the Windows command prompt. Play around with it, and when done, type exit and press enter. It will take you back to the Meterpreter session. The Meterpreter commands that we saw together were just the basic commands of Meterpreter. This powerful payload has lots of built-in scripts that can do lots of other things on the victim machine. I could spend a whole course for this, but I invite you to experiment them by yourself.